Welcome to this episode of Hope Ropes. I'm Vanessa, also known as your grateful guide and your host. And I'm here to just share stories of hope, healing, of transformation. I invite guests here that have their own stories of recovery and transformation. And I just ask that you listen with an open heart, open mind, and really just borrow our belief because we were where you're at right now. And today I have a really special guest, a dear friend of mine, a healing buddy, Whitney Rydman. And Whitney is a brand designer, a mind body expert whose work is behind some of the biggest names in the mind body space. Um, you'll know them. And as the founder of the Design Remedy, she creates nervous system informed brands people recognize and trust. She also designed my website, my app. She really brought my vision to life. So she knows what she's best in the biz is what I want to communicate to you. And Whitney has her own journey of recovery from chronic pain, chronic illness, and close to 100 symptoms at one point. And she shares so boldly and openly about her journey, especially about coming off of benzos and an SSRI cold turkey. So I brought her here today so she can share her story. Whitney, welcome.
Hi, I'm so
Yeah.
glad. This is long overdue
Yes.
to just actually have a conversation for the world to see with you because we talk practically daily about so many amazing things. So I'm really excited.
Yeah, exactly. We have I mean, both of you and I have so much experience in on the healing journey. We've both had multiple storms. It wasn't just one. Like we've had multiple opportunities for healing, and that's actually what's also inspired you to create your YouTube channel, Designed
Yeah.
to Heal, where you also share honest conversations about healing because we get it, and we're coming from this place of experience. Not because we've read all the books, but because we've lived it and are living it. So tell us about your story. I really love our listeners to just kind of get a glimpse into where you were at.
Yeah. Oh man, it's a long story, so it's always like a fun challenge for me to summarize it. But, um, I mean, I've always had anxiety since I was a kid. Um, my mom was experiencing some really traumatic things when she was pregnant with me. So I think for me, honestly, a lot of this just sensitization started in the womb. And I kind of came out into this world more sensitive and cautious and sort of yeah, having a hard time kind of trusting that I'm safe, like, as since I was just a little kid, like, that's always kind of been how I have behaved. Um, and so, when I was young, when I was about 14, I was experiencing a lot of agoraphobia and panic attacks and anxiety, and I got put on an SSRI and was told I had a chemical imbalance
Mm.
and that I needed that medication to function. And it did help me, like, for, many, many years. I still in the background had anxiety going on. I still kind of felt like I was a sensitive, like, highly sensitive person, and I felt different always, even being medicated. But, for the most part, life was great. Like, I traveled, I lived a full life, I was athletic, like, I did not have any limitations. And, but then life was lifing, and as I was
Mhm.
getting older, there was more stresses and, just other kind of traumas I experienced in adulthood that was definitely in the background. Like, my allostatic load was just climbing and climbing, and, I eventually started developing my first real, like, kind of debilitating chronic symptom, which was pelvic pain. And I got diagnosed with interstitial cystitis. And, like anybody else, I tried everything. I went to doctors, I tried different treatments, I tried every diet under the sun. Like, I was, just in this major fix it mode, but there was also a part of me that, like, really rejected the diagnosis, like, inside. Like, I
Mm.
really didn't wanna believe that this was something I was gonna have forever, even though I was told it was incurable. Um, And so I just kind of yeah, because it was just something I couldn't accept, like that this is my fate. Like yeah, so I just kept searching and searching for answers. And then I discovered the Curable app was like my first entryway into mind body medicine.
Yeah.
And it just made so much sense to me. So I started using the app. I started doing, Howard Schuberner's workbook and just learning. And I started noticing things beginning to shift, like as I was bringing in safety and like showing my brain and my nervous system that like I am okay, these sensations are safe. And so I just worked on my response and I did some emotional excavation a little bit, just getting curious about my emotional world. Interestingly enough for me, being on an SSRI, I had a really hard time accessing like these deep emotions, and I always said, like, I'm not a crier. I don't cry. Like, that's just my personality, but it's not. It's just the medication, I think, was sort of, like kind of dulling down these emotions, and so I just remember even when I would journal and try to kind of get to some of the emotional stuff going on within me that was creating a lot of the symptoms, I couldn't cry, and I would like put on like really sad music and like be like thinking about, or writing about like the saddest things I'd been through, like really sad losses and stuff. And I just couldn't cry really. And it was like such a feat to try to access that emotion.
Let's pause there
Um,
for a second because I think a lot of people can relate to that. I felt the same thing as well when I was on an SSRI. I remember watching like one of the, saddest movies, and in my brain it said, I know that I'm sad, but it wasn't computing to the sensation or the experience of sadness per se. And I had the same experience of trying to journal, right, and feel my emotions. And I would watch on like TikTok, you know, uh, someone returning home from the army, and it's like all those, all the videos that could spark some of that emotion. And I was emotionally constipated as
yep.
well. And I think even after coming off of the medication, I think, at least, from my experience, is that it almost like how we kind of unlearn feeling in a
Yeah.
sense because we haven't had the opportunity to sit with it or even emote really because that part of that whatever mind body connection is kind of temporarily paused, and
Yeah.
so then emoting, feeling becomes a skill that we have to rebuild again,
Yeah,
right? So
definitely. Yeah, definitely. And it was, I always, it's, I even, people are starting to talk about this a little bit more. Like I even saw something the other day. Um, It was just on Instagram and this podcaster that I follow, and she's on an SSRI. She's very open about it, and she was on an airplane, like, watching a movie, and she's like, "Oh my god," like and she took a picture of herself with, like, 1 tear coming down, and she's like, "This movie actually broke through the SSRI." And I just was like, "Oh
yeah,
my gosh, that's a
yep,
funny way
I
to
know
say it.
exactly what, yep.
But, yeah, so, as I was I did get out of pain, like, even though I couldn't access those deeper emotions, I think just the education, responding differently, reducing fear, having less resistance to what I was experiencing with these sensations, um, got me well, and I was doing well for about a year and a half,
Amazing.
um,
So no
and
pain, you kind of like,
nothing. Yeah, everything was
resolve.
gone. I did have, like, some symptom imperatives, like, during my recovery, things were moving around a bit, but overall, I was definitely, like, getting my life back and getting into a much better place, and that's when I kind of, as you heal, you start getting so passionate about, "Oh my gosh, like, everyone needs to know about this," like, most people don't understand how our system works, with our emotional world and then our physical sensations, and so I started structuring my design business to service people in the mind body space back then, and this was probably, gosh, like 6 years ago, maybe? And so I was doing really well, but like right as I was really recovering, the pandemic happened. And so I was like newly like, yay, like I'm great, like everything's fine. I was ready to travel. I was ready to like get out and just like seize the day, and live life. And then the whole world shut down. And then
Yeah.
it was like a cruel joke because I'm like, oh my gosh, like I'm ready and like I'm fine and I can't now go like live my life
Yeah.
because I'd been stuck, for a couple years really unwell. And so, I was newly well, and I think what started to happen was obviously there was all this fear and uncertainty with the pandemic and stress and, homeschooling 3 kids and, it was a lot, and there was so much fear, there was a lot of political upheaval in the US. I mean, it was just a crazy time, and, I remember, uh, I was doing pretty okay overall, but I think I was um, still that allostatic load was like going right back up.
Yeah.
And I got the COVID vaccine. And after the second dose, I had like this really big reaction to it. And I started developing POTS symptoms
Mm.
after I got the vaccine. And so, I knew it was TMS, like, because I just have been in this space. I work in this space. I've been through my own recovery. I, had the education and I knew that that symptom was nervous system related. So thankfully, I didn't go down a rabbit hole of like, I'm vaccine injured or, all
Yeah,
these things.
yeah.
I just knew like, okay, my nervous, this was the threshold and it just pushed me over. And so, I was at first just responding like how I always do, and I knew what to do. And I, started kind of, yeah, really using the same methods that I did before to get out of pain. And, but then things kind of kept escalating. And I started noticing that for some reason, when I would take my SSRI, within 2 hours, I would be having like a really adverse reaction out of
Mm.
nowhere. It just kind of started, it was almost like my system at that point just couldn't tolerate any more pharmaceuticals after the vaccine. It was like system overload, mayday, mayday. And I think it was starting to perceive maybe the SSRI as another threat because I was getting, my blood pressure would go through the roof. I would be like having like these mental breakdowns like after I would take it within 2 hours I would be like really activated and then I would like crash and be like having crying spells and it was just like whoa what
Wow.
is going on like my whole every I was just becoming very dysregulated and I went to the doctors and they were like you know we don't know what's happening. We don't know why this is happening, but like it's not safe, like what you're in the ER, like your blood pressure is getting way too high over and over. Like you just need to come off. Like we actually tried switching me to a couple other SRSRIs. Same thing was happening. Like
Mm.
looking back, I don't know, I know there's something called serotonin syndrome. They
Yeah.
sort of mentioned maybe that was going on, but I didn't have any like clear answers. Like the only thing was just like, you got to stop taking it. It's now not safe. And this pill, this medication I'd been on for 25 years, like was my safety. So that was a huge trigger for my whole nervous system because there was obviously the real experience of withdrawal, especially abrupt withdrawal off an SSRI, like, that's a very real
Yeah.
experience. However, there was also the, like, emotional, psychological component of I am taking away safety as well. And so it felt like there was nothing for me to hold on to feel safe at this point. Um, and so I went through withdrawal. I got put on a benzo to try to help the withdrawal because it was, I was really struggling and my system was just so activated. So they're like, let's try this for a while. And I was on that for a few months and started having some really deep depression and they thought, okay, well, maybe it's the benzo causing the depression. So I actually went to hospital and was in hospital for a week and they just cold turkey removed the benzo. because they thought that that was also now causing issues. And so I didn't taper. And these were all things that doctors were telling me to do. Like they were just pulling me off these meds quickly, saying these are dangerous. Like you just can't even do a taper. And so I really thought I'll be okay if I just hold on to the truth of mind body work. I know like what to do. I'll be able to handle this, but it was a whole other thing to go through something like that. It was such a shock to my nervous system that even having like the education I had, it felt like, and the knowledge and the tools, it just for a while there, I think there was no choice other than, my mental and emotional regulation was offline.
Mhm.
I couldn't access that for a while. And so that at this point I had, yeah, close to 100 symptoms, mental, physical, like, I felt like I had every mental illness you could get diagnosed with all at once. And also all of these physical symptoms. One of the hardest ones was akathisia, which is, usually tied to a pharmaceutical and either going on a psych med or coming off a psych med. There's other meds that can trigger it as well, but that was probably out of everything one of the most challenging things I've experienced. And I kind of felt on my own. And even in the mind body space, I felt alone in this because a lot of people don't talk about it openly because they don't want to drive fear, around
Yeah, yeah.
medication. A lot of people in this space are on these medications. And I don't want to drive that fear either. Like, I want to be a story of hope that, even in the worst case scenario, like, you will come through the other side. And the way through is through this work. That is the only way out, at that point, but, like, it's yeah, there's just so much. I almost feel like that's a whole other episode we will
Episode,
be
yeah.
doing,
Yep,
but, yeah, that was kind of what I like to call round 2 for me
yep.
of being really just unwell and needing to heal and recover, and it's taken longer, and it's been more challenging because 'cause I've just had more symptoms and more things to overcome, and now being off the SSRI, I am definitely a crier. I am not emotionally blunted. In fact, it almost felt like 25 years worth of tears came out when I came
Mm,
off. And I was crying every day for over a year, like sobbing. And it
wow,
was
yeah.
overwhelming. I mean, that was also one of my debilitating symptoms was uncontrollable crying. And I'm like, where is this coming from? And so it was all of this suppressed material that I couldn't access for so long. And now I was flooded with it. So a lot needed to kind of come up and come out. And I've learned so much this second time. And as hard as it's been, I feel like it's gotten me to where I've needed to be. I have such a deeper understanding now of myself and my parts and all these things that I didn't really fully tap into the first time while I was on medication. So
So it's a it I was actually talking about this with Joe from the Healing Dudes yesterday as well, and we've all of us had these second storms,
mhm.
and I was, I don't know if you experienced this as well, but for myself, I had I not had my perfect storm, I don't think I would have gone this deep into the work,
Yep.
right? Into really I
Yeah.
would not have really, been at this place of full safety, I probably would not have allowed because, where what I had learned, let's say, prior to that second storm was a lot of redirecting, just
Mm.
a lot of the typical brain retraining stuff in that second storm was this opportunity to like, you had no choice but
to
to
not
allow.
redirect and
Yeah.
to meet it.
Exactly,
Yeah, yeah.
and so is that, what you found as well? Like, do you think you would have ever gone here and gotten to know your internal family system and,
No, it's been a whole journey, and like I said, I mean, the first time around, I did do journaling, I did, but yeah, I didn't go as deep. And the first time I recovered, I didn't do any brain retraining. I didn't do any like redirect or, I mean, I guess my response was changing, and there was a lot of like, don't focus on the
Yep.
symptoms. They'll just grow. Like, just move your attention onto other things and then take some time each day to sit with your emotions. Like, that was the work
Mm,
I did. So it's like,
yes.
I'm not repressing, but I'm not I'm also kind of, yeah, constantly moving my attention elsewhere, which was what got me well. Um, this second time around, because of like the sheer volume of symptoms I had and, where I was at, and I think especially because I had developed like POTS and chronic fatigue, I feel like that sort of did open this path, and I started hearing a lot about like the nervous system and brain retraining, and like that's how you overcome those symptoms. That's kind of like the
Interesting.
message I got.
Yeah.
Whereas like before it was chronic pain and it felt like, oh, okay, do somatic tracking and
Yep.
like do some emotional work and just keep living your life. But I felt like with the chronic illness stuff, there was a lot of talk on social media and online about like brain retraining, like that's what
Yeah.
you have to do. And so, yeah, I did that for a while. I did, the redirecting and the stop, 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 and the visualizations, which I still like, the visualizations were very supportive, and I
Yep.
I definitely feel like that was a useful thing for me to do for a while, especially because I was in such a, like, really low, deep depression as well, and I it yeah, like, you can't allow all the time with that. Like, you do
You
need
can't even at
something.
that point, right?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah, well, especially in
yeah.
withdrawal, like, you
What's
cannot
allowing?
allow, like, you just can't even. So, I I needed something to kind of, yeah, like, be able to support me and bring some safety in other ways first, and so that's what I did for, like, a good year and a half.
Yep.
Um, but like many people, not everybody, but many people, after a while, there was something in me that started to feel like I am this constant, like, stop, 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 like the redirect, redirect. Um, at one point I worked with a coach, like a brain retraining coach who told me like, "Hey, if you start crying, you need to set a timer and you need to only let yourself cry for like 60 seconds and then you need to stop
Mhm.
crying and go do like laughter yoga."
Oh,
And
okay.
I couldn't do it. Like, I tried, but when I would have a crying spell, like, I couldn't just stop it and go laugh. And it felt like I was really denying something in me that was needing to just be allowed and felt.
Yeah.
And it never sat right with me. And for quite a while, that really created a very unhealthy relationship with crying for me because
Wow.
it felt like you're not allowed. You have to
Mm.
go change how you feel and do something to make you happy, which I couldn't anyway. And looking back now, I see that was all just teaching me resistance.
Mm.
And that's where, I'm kind of starting to boldly come out and talk about this is I think it is a big misalignment in this space to teach people to resist themselves like that, at that level. And yes, I think depending on where you're at, there's things that are going to be supportive that you need to do first for a little while,
Yep.
but inevitably, what is going to get you to the finish line and like get you really well is learning how to allow and be with all your parts and every emotion and every sensation and just be able to listen to it and be with it, because we know what we resist persists, you know? And yeah, so for me, that has been this round of healing. The biggest lesson I have learned is resistance is the thing to be aware of and paying attention to in your behaviors and how you're responding to things. Um, I really believe that if you have chronic symptoms, you have chronic resistance.
Mm,
And I
so
believe that
true.
as you learn to drop the resistance, the symptoms will follow and go and drop as well. That's just my, like, I guess, truth that I've learned through this, that that is the crux of what's going on.
Well, let's even think about resistance as well. Like, what is the story of resistance, right? It tells us that something is wrong, that it's not okay as it is. There's an element of, maybe even some sort of judgment, right? That's driving the resistance.
It shows up in so many ways,
It does,
and
it
it's
does,
sneaky.
and yeah, yeah, I think you've called it a sneaky bitch
Yes,
before,
that's
right?
what I
Like,
call it.
resistance is a sneaky bitch,
Yep.
name of your book, right? But, yeah, let's talk a little bit about well, I wanna talk about resistance, but I wanna first just kind of go more into your stories. So you kind of, did some of the brain retraining a year and a half in, some of the resources were supportive, the visualization, that sort of
Yeah.
stuff, and then you, like you said, kind of realize, like, "Hold on, like, this doesn't feel authentic, this doesn't feel real, this doesn't feel sustainable even," and, like, where were you at that point?
Yeah, it wasn't really moving the needle for me a lot. Like, maybe a
Yeah.
little bit, I think, yes. But I also was taking what I'd known from the first round of healing. Like,
Mhm.
you gotta get back to life. You gotta, like,
Yep.
bring symptoms with you. You need to kind of allow them to be there and engage in things that are bringing, your focus onto your life. Like, instead of just being so focused on recovery, So I knew that and I was doing that as well. But I think it reached a point where I was judging myself if I couldn't shift my state or if I
Yes.
wasn't doing the brain retraining right or if I wasn't doing this enough or oh, I'm not hitting my hour of visualizations. And it just became a pressure. It became something that was bringing up that like pressury inner critic part in me. And then I had to learn about that part and like work through. And then it was like, that's when I just was like, I got to get into this deeper work because that brain retraining could only take me so far before, but like all those parts were still there. And now they're becoming mixed in with my recovery. And like, they're, it's, yeah. And so, yeah, I really had to start getting in. I started doing parts work. I mean, I was doing somatic experiencing as well. But I don't think yeah, I mean, looking back, like, I would say I was still expecting things to change while I
Mm,
was doing this, and they weren't, and that made me feel more broken because I
yeah,
kept hearing of people being like, "Oh, I did somatic experience somatics,
yes.
and I recovered," and then I'm like or I felt so much better after or whatever, and I'm like, "Well, I don't." So, like, why is it not? And it was because I was really, really wanting it to work. It was like
An
because there
ulterior
was
motive.
yeah, it was like a weapon, I was weaponizing it and there was just this, I was trying to be outcome independent with it, but at the same time, I was in such a state of suffering that I really wanted it to shift me. And, um and so I can see now that that was why, it wasn't getting me where I wanted to be. Um, and the turning point for me, I think this is what really started getting me. I had started exploring the parts work and, getting into some of the deeper things. I kind of dropped the brain retraining. I kind of like said, okay, like we're not honest, we're not having to do all this every day. This isn't a to-do list. Um, and one day somebody asked me, somebody, who helped me a lot in my first round of recovery, who's Nicole Sachs, who, does journal speak and the emotional work. And we were talking one day and she said, Whitney, what would you do if this never went away?
Mhm.
What are you going to do if it doesn't ever get better? You know? And at first it was like the worst question because it scared me. But that question kind of prompted me to look at that fear and face that potential outcome. Like, what will you do? And I had to really sit with that for a while, and it was one of the hardest things I had to sit with was that being asked that, and I know why she was asking me that. It's because she was trying to get me to learn to accept how I was and
Mm.
where I was at and stop trying to heal. And so that was, eventually I did get the answer to that question, which was, if this is here forever, if this never goes away or it takes years or whatever. And at the time, the specific thing we were talking about was the akathisia. And the answer to the question was, okay, if this is going to be here forever, then I'm going to have to try to make my life as meaningful as I can while it's here. And now that became my focus, which was
It does.
acceptance and
Yes.
allowing it to be there. And so I started moving into that more. And I noticed pretty quickly I didn't get relief right away or, symptoms didn't go away right away, but the internal fighting, like that resistance, that inner conflict, that pressure, that I could feel was shifting. And just that alone started to move the needle a bit. And I was like,
Mhm.
oh,
So that permission even, right? Just that permission to soften in a sense, surrender to
surrender.
this. And I think that that's actually been the commonality that I've seen in most of those of us who've recovered is we all got to a place where we said, all right, it's gonna take as long as it takes. I'm not, gonna put my
Yep.
life on hold anymore. And
Yep.
that was a pivotal moment for me, I know, and it's like, even you have a family, right? You have kids.
Mhm.
It's like, how long am I gonna wait to live a life with them?
Yeah.
Am I going to wait until I'm symptom free?
Yeah.
No. Like,
Right.
there comes a point where you have to ask that question. What
Yeah.
if it's going to take longer than you expected?
Yeah.
What if it's around for a while, right? What can you or how can you live as you're healing and heal as you're living,
Right. Yeah. How
right?
can you
So
bring some meaning and purpose back into your world? Like, how can you still make memories? And I had to start, where I was at. Um, but that's really what got me on that path of like the resistance, and looking for the resistance to what is, the resistance to
exactly.
what is. And not just the symptoms, but where I'm at in general or, you know, resistance to the fact that, I have been a mother with chronic pain and illness, like, have to accept that now,
Yeah.
which was so hard. And I will say, like, I think for me as a mom, and maybe you probably, I'm sure you can relate to this, like, that was the biggest source of pressure I was putting on myself. The biggest reason that I had this feeling of like, I just need to get better is because I have this little tiny person who depends on me, who is growing before my own eyes, and I am missing out on memories that I will never be able to get back at this age. and all these important things that I am not doing with her that I had always wanted to do. And it was like that grief and that pain around that was so hard. Um, and I just, it felt impossible to accept, you know, but I was able to, through dropping the resistance, like get to a place where, I don't know, for me, it had to start with like, I'm good and I might not be the mom that I want to be, but I'm a good enough
Mm.
mom. I'm good enough. I'm here. I love her. Like I'm here and I love
Yeah.
her. Like, let's start there, you know? Um, there
You mentioned something about grief, right? Because I know, any parent out there who's on this journey, even if you're not a parent and, you have people that love you, that you feel you're disappointing,
yeah.
right? And that pressure to be better, to do more, to be who you want to be. We talk about the fact that we can't accept the fact that we ended up how we are. And so there's this fight, this resistance
Yeah.
to accepting our reality because
Mhm.
and we fight to reject it. That keeps us in survival. Every
Mhm.
time you say, "No, no, this isn't my life." Right? We're resisting it and then we're really in this process of fighting in a sense, right? This can't be my reality. This can't be it. And what I found has been so helpful and I mean really propelled kind of that process is the grieving of it.
Yep.
Because when we can grieve it, there's this beauty of of just you're in the moment, you see things for as they are, it's reality. You literally lift the veil and, like, now it's in front of your face.
Mhm.
Grief does that. It brings you
Mhm.
to the here, to the now, and when we can grieve what was, we can accept what is and make room for what can be, so
Yeah.
that acceptance piece that you're
Mhm.
talking about, right? It's like we're resisting. Well, what if we start to see things for how they are? What if we look at, right on and allow the grief to be there? That's part of getting you to that acceptance.
100%. I don't think you can even get to the full like, get to acceptance if you don't grieve. Like, you
I
have
agree.
to go through that. You do. You have to feel it, and it's a lot of people don't want to, but that's resistance. And, um, I mean, if you think about it, when you grieve anything else, not just yourself, essentially, that's what you're grieving is yourself, the life you had, how you felt before, who you were, when you were not ill, all that. But, if you think about a loss in your life, and you're grieving a person, we I mean, not everybody, but I think a lot of us kind of can accept that that's part of the process. Like, you're going to grieve for a while. And eventually, as you move through that grief, and eventually with time, you start to accept, right? Because what do they say in the stages of grief?
Stages
It's
of
like the
grief. Yeah.
denial, and then you finally move into acceptance. But it is a path to get there. Like, you've got to go through all that uncomfortable, the resistance of it, the grief, everything, until you can, yeah, before you can get to that place of kind of, "Okay, this is the
Okay.
reality. I've got
Yep.
to accept it. Now what? Okay, now I
Now
can
what?
start really honoring them, or now I can start, like, so we start moving into a new relationship with the situation." Um, and it's the same, yeah, I think in recovery, like, you just start to kind of, um, be okay with it, more, even though it's not fun and it's challenging and it's not maybe what you wanted, in life, but it's such a skill to be able to do that, because then you can apply that to, like, so many other things in life that maybe aren't happening the way you want. That's always gonna be like, life is never just gonna be a fairy tale,
Exactly. Yeah.
you're gonna have
We
things
know.
there's gonna be things that happen, and, so learning, yeah, for me, like, the idea of acceptance and allowing, and then but the resistance is part of that. Like, you have to understand, like, I almost feel like for me, it's this, kind of high level awareness that I will probably practice forever now, which is just where's the resistance? Like, I have to see where the resistance is before I can allow, and there are times where I have was not, able to allow. Like, and then then that inner critic comes up. I'm like, well, you're not even allowing no, or then I'm allowing to try to make something go away and I'm not really allowing it. And that's where I've like talked to you before
Oh,
about
yeah.
what got me through that barrier was then I need to allow the resistance now
Yeah.
because at least then I'm allowing something. I'm allowing something. I'm allowing myself to resist. And I have found that has always inevitably started the process of getting me to actually allow what I couldn't, is I had
Yes.
to first allow that I couldn't allow it.
Yeah, so almost that, obviously recognizing and not judging the fact that there is resistance
Yeah.
here,
So it's a
right?
softening even to the fact that
Yes.
you can't soften will
Yes.
start to help you soften that
Yes.
too.
Isn't
But
that
it's like,
wild? It makes
yeah,
sense.
it's because it's like you just gotta get started somehow with the
Yeah.
softening, and the resistance part can be so strong, um, that then it's kind of an acceptance of, "This is where I'm at then. I
Yeah.
am resisting," I've had moments, many moments where I could feel that I was really resisting how I felt and what I was experiencing.
Yeah.
And I would try to kind of allow it, or I'd try to work through the steps or the tools that I've learned through my recovery of just like dropping into the body. Okay, like really allow it, or, like, or whatever it is, or yeah, like acknowledge it and then let's bring it with you and refocus. And it was like, the resistance was just like not letting me, like, I couldn't do it. Um, and so many times, just me saying, I'm resisting. I'm resisting. I'm resisting all of this right now, everything. Uh, just started to move the needle for me. And then I would move into, yeah, like,
Yes. I love that.
and I would just have this shift, um, by not trying to shift.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like, why are
Isn't
we
that the
trying so
paradox?
hard, right?
Yeah,
Like, why are
right,
we trying so hard?
right.
And
Yeah.
with that resistance, I know for myself, I've, always seen it. I've actually gotten or wired my brain to get excited about resistance and start to see it as reassurance. I reframe resistance is reassurance that this is where I need to go,
Mhm.
right? Where the resistance lies,
Mhm.
resistance is also a reflection of the potential here. And
Mhm.
that's why
Yeah.
the resistance is so big. So for me, it's I almost reframed and rewired my brain with this new expectation of like, oh, resistance is here.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay.
This
It
is
means
good
that
because
there's
it's an
potential.
opportunity. This is why I feel like I'm like a resistance hunter. Like I have my binocular, like that's why I look for it now
Yeah.
because, you know, um, resistance is almost like could be kind of in the same realm of like avoidance,
Yeah.
and we always hear like, you that like what's the quote? Like whatever it is you're trying to avoid, like
What you
there's your
resist persists
yeah,
and
or
like
like whatever
what
it is
you
you're
prevent.
avoiding, like that's your task, like
Yes.
is to
Yes.
face that. So it's kind of in that same sort of line of thinking. And so that's been the path I've been on. And I know in the last several months, like, you and I were such close friends and we talk so regularly, and you've been there with me from pretty much like the beginning of this second wave for me, and you've seen like where I've been and how much I've struggled. And I know, like you mentioned to me the other day, like you're like, oh wow, I feel like in the last few months, like there's like some big shifts and transformations
Oh yeah.
within you. And for me, like when I look back over these last several months, it's when I started looking for all my resistance and dropping it. That's, I think, been what has gotten me on this path, I
Yeah.
guess, of all these things that are shifting and changing in me.
Yeah, because 'cause
Um,
I've definitely seen that, and I've kinda, we've known each other for almost 4 years now, and, I've kind of seen your evolution. I've kinda I saw when you were doing kind of like the standard brain
yeah.
retraining. And I saw how, their visualization played a part in that, right? And it got you to this kind of place. And then I saw when you dabbled with or tried. I knew you were really into somatic
Mhm.
experiencing at one point, and
Yeah,
then
in person,
and
I
then
was seeing somebody for it and doing it in
yeah,
person and yeah.
yeah, and you started, that was like a part of building this capacity within your body even. So it's almost like you were kind of building the building blocks to this place of like, full on allowing,
Like, I'm
and
ready. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, and this past, I would say, like, the last probably, like, 4 to s ish months, 4-ish
Yeah.
months, I was like, "Whoa," it has, like, snowballed in a good way,
Yeah.
and it's wild because, and this is even a hope rope in that is, like, you've been doing the work and you've been, pivoting and kind of bringing in what resonates during that season, and you didn't really have, let's say, that much, or you didn't have the expansion you had expected as
Mhm.
soon as you would have wanted, let's put it that way, for all that's how it goes for all of us. But it's like it all came together, and then it just propelled so quickly. Like, I've seen your evolution in the past, like, say, 6 months, I wanna say, has been remarkable. And yeah, and I just wanted to reflect that back to you because it's really cool to witness it in real time and to see that all of this is coming together and it's evolving into this true self. I was like, "Whitney, I didn't know who this person was." I remember saying, I'm like, "Wow, I'm watching you on your stories and I'm, listening to you speak, and it's like, who is she?" Because I never got to know who you were outside of survival.
Yeah.
And now it's like, wow, like, I loved you as you were, and now this is just amazing, just extra and such a gift for me as a friend to just have you now,
Aw.
as more authentically, because you're not
Mhm.
in survival anymore. It's like you're
Mhm.
in this embodiment of safety that you never had before.
Yeah. And I'm still on the path, it's like I still have symptoms that, come and go a bit and, but yeah, like I definitely feel way more connected to myself. I feel like I, like, really, like, love myself
Yeah,
again.
I can tell.
And I feel like I just yeah, like I have a much different response to myself. I'm not and you know what it is? It's like when you stop resisting sensations and emotions and stuff cuz I see that as like you're kind of resisting all these parts of you
Mhm,
and that are
exactly.
speaking. And so when you stop resisting the sensations and the emotions, the beautiful thing that starts to happen is you start to accept yourself. You start to change your relationship with yourself and you allow you to come back
Yeah,
into the picture,
yeah,
Like, she's
I've
allowed to be
experienced
here,
that too.
you know?
Yeah,
And in the last 6 months, like, the other thing I think I'll say that has been a big part of that too is weightlifting and
that's right.
I love to call it resistance training because and not and just the tip it's like a double play for me on what that actually means. Like, it's not, "Okay, yeah, it's resistance, it's weight." It's like I'm, breaking my muscles down and, like the
Yep,
classic way we think of resistance training. But for me, it is resistance training in terms of, like, doing it is oftentimes, not always, but a lot of times, like, it will bring up uncomfortable sensations,
yep,
as somebody been recovering from chronic fatigue or POTS or, different pains in my body, I'm, teaching my nervous system like this movement is safe. And with resistance training, it's an exposure every time I do it,
yes,
but I'm going into it like you, where it's like this is an opportunity. And actually, it sounds probably weird, maybe, especially for people who are really in it right now, like in their symptoms. But like I, like, look forward to doing my workouts, and I've been so consistent with the weight training because I cannot wait to see what comes up for me to allow
Oh, I love
and,
that.
like, not resist.
Yeah.
So it's resistance training, and it's, like, this kind of, like, challenge for me now in, like,
Mhm.
a positive way. It's definitely not comfortable at times, but I'm learning so much about how to listen and
Hmm.
how to adjust what I'm doing, and it's like this relationship with myself. Like, there's times where when I'm weight training, like, something it might be really, really hard that day, like, I might be really off balance, for some reason, or I might be just not having as much energy, or I'm, yeah, getting really activated. And then all these old stories and fears come up about, like, my heart rate or, like, all this stuff from, like, what I've been dealing with over the years, and it's like, "Good, I want this to come up because I wanna keep changing my response to it. I wanna keep learning how to allow it," and it's still difficult, but, um, it's kind of this, yeah, and then how can I'm just coming at it with so much curiosity.
That's exactly the word I wanted to use for it because I'm like,
Yeah,
this is curiosity. This is let's see what's
yeah,
here, right? Not
yeah.
having it that outcome independence,
Mhm,
right? Just kind of really being that curious observer and coming into this from a sense of like, even if it's not perfect, it's okay.
mhm,
Even if the sensation is here, I'm okay. Even if this emotion comes up, I'm all right? So all of
yeah,
this kind of building and think of that from a capacity perspective, right? Every time you are doing one of these workouts, it's like you're giving yourself the opportunity to expand in capacity, and it's like this incremental exposure therapy, and it's like, okay,
mhm,
some days are easier than others,
mhm,
but I'm not judging it, right? I
mhm,
know it's just a reflection of the state that day, or it's just a
mhm,
part. Maybe there's more than one part today, or maybe I'm blended with a part right now, and that's
mhm,
okay too. But yeah, it's just to see that kind of that evolution of, because I know when you first started being more consistent with the weight training, and it wasn't easy. You weren't, I don't know if you were, maybe even talk about that for someone
mhm,
who's like just starting out,
mm,
because
mm.
there are
Yeah,
so many stories,
yeah,
so much
yeah.
resistance. Yeah.
Yeah, I started actually, the first time I started attempting any kind of resistance training was, gosh, I mean, it's been probably like a year and a half ago. And, I was just starting without weights. I was just doing resistance bands and
Right.
kind of body weight. And, I actually had a coach who I work with now again, and her name's Kirsten Kimura, and she's a fitness trainer, but she also recovered from chronic pain, and so she's nervous system
Awesome.
informed. And I reached out to her one day, and I'm like, I know you're like a fitness trainer and you just work with people who are like well, but like how can I get started? Like how can I, what can I do? And so she kind of just like gave me a workout plan to try and was like, "Let's just not do weights and just start here." And so, and it was tough. I did it probably for about like 3 months. Not I mean, I was somewhat consistent, but I was flaring a lot. I was kind of and I started getting really there was some empowerment happening, but I was also getting really big flares, and I was not on this, like I was not where I am now with the resistance part. I hadn't had
Right.
that, like, epiphany yet, I guess, or, like, that awareness and that, like, just yeah, like so I would respond with a lot of, like, negativity and frustration and feeling defeated when I would try to do a session of strength training, like, things would get really loud, and then, like, I couldn't do it because it was too
Yeah.
hard. And then I would, like, cry, and I would, like, feel so upset. That was also part of the grief of, like, I wasn't accepting where I was at, and I just so badly wanted to be able to work out again. I always have been, like, a pretty active person, and I just felt like, like, I
Yeah.
just why can't I do this yet? This is so frustrating. So I wasn't in the right place yet in my own internal journey of my relationship with myself and everything. Like I was on my way, but I wasn't really there. And so it didn't work. Like I couldn't do it before. I just couldn't do it. It was like I was, yeah, just getting like way too symptomatic. I was, having these really negative responses. I was just in a more depressed place. It was, yeah. And so I started again like 6 months ago. And that was all happening at the same time that I was like starting to think about the resistance stuff
Mm.
and the allowing and like just dropping the resistance and in pretty big kind of radical ways. Like I was, experiencing a lot of panic attacks and
Yeah.
agoraphobia and like not leaving my house and
Yeah.
feeling like I'm going to die, like it was intense at that time when I started doing this. And I was working with somebody who was kind of um the first sort of person I'd kind of coached with who was kind of like a tough love kind of guy, and he started saying to me like, "Well, what are you scared is going to happen? What are you worried about?" And I'm like, "I'm scared I'm going to, I don't know, like I feel like I'm going to pass out or I'm going to die or I'm going to have a heart attack or whatever." And he's like, "All right, let's go. Let's have a heart attack." And he had this like radical like acceptance
Mm.
approach, and it was kind of like in a way, I had to start even, like, learning how to not even resist the worst possible outcome and just accept that. And, of
Yeah.
course, it didn't happen and it wouldn't happen. It wasn't going to happen, but that very scared survival part of me was, like, feeling like it might, and I
Yeah.
had to kind of soften around that a little bit, like,
Yeah.
to face it. And, so I was practicing that a lot, just and yeah, and then when, again started with just the resistance bands and body weight, but I was being very consistent with that for about 3 months, and I could feel some, like, empowerment coming on, and I could start feeling like my relationship with sensations as I was doing it was changing because at the same time that I was doing it this time, I was working on my resistance in across the board, in my all my symptoms and anxiety and just in my life. So now looking back, I can see like, oh, that's why I was able to keep going and like respond
Yes.
okay because it became a part of my healing
Yep.
and a part of like kind of the challenge, which was like, where are you resisting? Where are you resisting? And the workouts were a great place for that to just come right up. And it was like perfect. Like I don't even have to go leave my house or, whatever, be in this situation that's going to trigger me. I can just go in my garage and start working
Yeah.
out and it's going to come great. Like easy peasy, like instant opportunity.
So true.
And I started seeing it that way, and it was like, "Great." And then, yeah, I started after the 3 months, I built enough confidence to where I was like, "I'm ready for weights." And when I started doing the weight training, oh man, that just took it to another place because it's harder, and I started getting all the benefits that you get from movement. Like, it's so great for our whole system in so many ways.
It really is. It
I mean,
really
there's
is.
so many benefits we know to this. And I started getting those benefits and I started noticing like I'm getting stronger. And it started changing my relationship with my body. And it felt like, ooh, I'm actually doing something consistently that's like actually changing things, which with all
Yeah.
the trying to heal and get rid of symptoms and all that, like, and it wasn't really changing. It's like, look, it's inevitable. If you are weight training 3 times a week and you're like, properly nourishing yourself, you are going to get stronger. And it is really empowering because you feel like, okay, like here's something that's actually um changing my body. It's getting me into my body in a way that I was not in my body before. I think weightlifting has really helped me be embodied. And there's just something to it that has really started to change things for me too, like in these last 6 months, big time.
I can
Um,
relate for sure, 'cause I
yeah,
think my journey of movement sounds very much like yours as well. Like, I definitely started very, very slowly, resistance bands. Prior to getting sick, I was an avid, like, gym rat.
yeah,
I was a federal officer, like, I was fit.
mhm,
And I lost all of that, years. I barely moved. I was deconditioned. And that's something to understand too, is a lot of the
yeah,
times, yeah, we're thinking that it's, all the mind body symptoms why as I'm trying to move this is happening, but there's also a part of being deconditioned.
yeah,
Like, if you've been laying down or sitting in a bed for a very long time, yeah, it's gonna be rough.
yeah,
You're probably gonna have trouble breathing properly or
yeah,
until train that. You're gonna get tired. It's going to be a struggle. So, I had to let go of that I think I expected myself to pick up where I left off.
yes, yeah,
And there was so much shame initially of like,
mhm,
"Whoa, I can't even do like 5 pounds." Like I used
yeah,
to do 20
right,
pound arm
yeah,
curls. And so dropping that shame of like, "Okay, I'm gonna move because I love myself enough to move and I know it's good for me, and I'm not going to attach like an expectation for it." To it. And so for me, it was, resistance bands. I was like doing them laying down at first. I couldn't even like stand at that point. But I remember being in my bed with these resistance bands I got off Amazon and I was just moving my thighs back and forth, back and forth. And I remember there was a doctor who told me when I'd gone for my POTS evaluation, and he was like, the best muscle that you could possibly work out is your quads.
really,
'Cause
yeah,
that's going to pump all the muscle to your heart and to your brain. So he goes, strengthen your quads. And I'm like, I can't even stand up. What do you mean strengthen my quads? So I started in bed. And even that little minute movement of strengthening, that area and then evolving to on a recumbent bike and then standing and then squats and then adding in the dumbbells, and that helped me personify the true self I was visualizing. It helped me
mhm,
embody that
mhm,
true self.
mhm,
And I don't know if you do this as well, but as even now, as I work out, because I work out, I do resistance training. And even from back then, I would visualize as I was working out, but not, it's like I wouldn't even think I'm visualizing, but it's like I had this vision in my head of this true self and the power and the strength and the beauty, and it felt like a light would get switched on, and I would suddenly be there. I would be embodied in that true
yeah,
self.
mhm,
So totally relate to this, and that was a part of my healing is the point I was trying to make. um
yeah.
yeah.
I wanna say something real quick about, like, what you were talking about with, like, the doctor, and saying, like, with the POTS, like, "Oh, work out the leg muscles," because I always heard that too, right? Like, "Oh, you gotta do that so that you can get the blood pumping," and it was kind of this, like, to fix, right? And, like, "Oh, this is what's going on," and but, like, the hearing that and, like, now that I've been doing the weightlifting and gone through I mean, POTS isn't really a thing for me
Right.
anymore much, when I'm stressed, maybe kind of I notice it more, but, I, uh, I think, like, looking back now that it's interesting that doctors recommend that, and I think that their story and what they think it's doing isn't really why they've seen it
Yeah.
help people. Because I think you don't need these strong muscles for your nervous system regulate, but I think it gets people back in their bodies, and I
Yes.
think it starts helping them feel empowered.
Yep.
And I think it helps them start identifying with their body in a new healthy way of like, I'm okay, I'm strong, I'm safe, I'm
Yes.
able to do this. And so I think that's why they've seen it be effective for people. I don't think it's because it's like, oh, well, now your circulation is better and it's this like very
Yeah.
physical
Exactly.
solution.
Exactly, right? Just like when you're wearing the compression stockings, they're like, "Wear compression stockings,"
Yeah.
and suddenly you feel better, and you think that, cures it, but the truth is, I know that that didn't heal the
No,
POTS.
that didn't help me. I think that's, like,
Yeah.
more of maybe like a placebo thing or, like, feeling a
Exactly.
sense of control over this, so it's bringing in a little bit of safety because
Yeah.
there's something you can do to help, it just
Yeah,
but,
exactly.
but I don't we know that that doesn't
Yeah.
actually heal or do anything. It's a coping thing, and, yeah, I didn't actually ever do any of that. I tried it for, like, a couple days, and I was just like, "This isn't like, no." Like, I just because but again, I knew about my body, I knew the nervous system, and
Yeah.
I wasn't really, um, yeah, going about it that way. Like, I kinda knew that it was the inner work, it was the,
Yeah.
this other way, but yeah, I think it's just funny, like, hearing you talk about
Yeah, it
that
is, right?
recommendation of like, "Oh, you gotta get your legs strong," and, and it's like,
Yeah.
well, but, like, mentally, what's that doing as you do that? And, you know, um, so
I think for me, it was this permission to actually move from a
yeah,
doctor to say it's
yeah,
safe to move.
yeah, exactly,
And
yeah,
then I was like, "Oh, well, if he said it's safe for me to move, then maybe I can start moving because I was
mhm.
terrified of moving because
Oh,
of the heart
totally,
rate,
yeah,
right? So
right,
it's so interesting how when we get permission from someone and, like, especially an authority to start doing something that's in alignment with your values, because for me, movement was up there. Like, exercising, resistance
yeah,
training, that
yeah,
was up there on this list of things that, I really, really desired, like,
yeah,
desired.
mhm,
And
me
just
too,
getting that permission to be like, "Hey, yeah, like, go
mhm,
start moving, start
mhm,
exercising that muscle," and for me, it was, like, interpreted as that, you know obviously come from a militant background, but it was like, "Here, go do your stuff now, like, get stronger, you've got this, we're going to war," and I was like, "What?" Like, this energy just kind of flowed through me, and I felt
mhm,
like it was again kind of personifying more of, a state, I guess, of, like, strength, right? Of
yeah, yeah,
a power state in a
mhm,
sense,
yeah,
not knowing back then why it was, um, like, or what it was doing, but it's just so interesting, right? Because I mean, we get so much advice. I remember even my cardiologist, telling me, just meditate, like, that's all you need to do," and I'm like, "I can't sit still, like,
yeah,
I can't how am I gonna meditate when my brain is popping constantly and I have 1,000 sensations?"
mhm,
But there was also that permission to say, "Oh, that's literally what kind of started me getting
mhm,
me into the mind body world as well."
mm,
So,
mhm,
just
yeah.
so interesting, Whitney, like,
I know.
yeah,
And movement for me too, a huge thing. It's like in a way well, it's because you're kind of challenging these beliefs that you can't, and you're challenging even the sensations because
yeah,
it might bring them up, but be willing and curious to bring them up. Like it's
yeah,
starting to get you to drop some resistance to that happening if you're like leaning, with you know, any symptom really, but like, specifically talking again about like the POTS symptom, because like I think this is important to touch on is, when you even just standing or being upright, you're having these symptoms with your heart rate, you start to kind of almost like develop, at least for me, I feel like I developed a very like disordered relationship with my heart rate. And it was just this like
yes,
horrible thing now to feel. And but with walking and working out and weightlifting, like, I am actually doing things that are going to make it do that now, which is facing and not trying to not make it happen.
yes,
When you're
exactly.
laying down and you're sitting down and you're like, "No, I can't handle it." It's like, now I'm actively doing things. Well, the whole time I've been actively, I knew it's like, okay, I need to recondition this. I need to be okay with it being here. Like, I need to face it. I need to let it be there. I need to let it go wild. Let it go wild. Like that's something I say to myself all the time if I'm working out and, like I don't even really pay attention to what my heart rate's doing, but sometimes I'll look back on a workout and I'll see like, wow, it got to 180
Yeah,
at one point, when I was doing like a really tough, exercise and I'll feel it, in between sets and I'll sit there and it's like, "Ooh, all right. This reminds me of being in bed and being like, really unwell with this
yeah,
sensation. This I just made that come up again." But then it's like okay, like, let it go wild. Like, come on, like, let's do this because I need to have a new relationship with this. This is healthy and I know I am safe and nothing's going to happen, you know? And I
Yeah,
just got to be okay with it being here at this where it's at right now. Um I get that question a lot. Like a lot of people have been messaging me on Instagram like with pots. Like, "Well, how did you do this? Like, how did you start moving with that?" And it just I'm sure it was the same for you. You just start
yeah.
small. I started
That's
with just
exactly
walking to
what
the
it is.
bathroom and then it was like now I'm walking to the mailbox and then, okay, like but I think what I was still resisting that it was happening though inside. I hated it that it was happening. I hated it. I didn't want it there. I wanted it to go away. I resisted it. There was this internal like grief and battle with like all of that was happening. And um I think looking back in hindsight now, I was at where I was at. And it's been an evolution to get here. But now it's a different response. It's a okay, like, all
Yeah,
right, this is here.
yeah.
Be here. Go ahead. Go wild. That's what I like to say to her.
Go
Go wild.
wild. Go wild.
Have a party. Go ahead. Do what you gotta do.
Yeah.
Um, and
I
so
remember one thing that helped me a little bit was because I would go to the cardiologist and complain and be like, I'm like so scared when it goes up. Like, what do I do?" And
yeah.
he's like, "Don't be afraid. Your heart's healthy. All you're
Yeah.
doing is giving it a good workout."
Yeah.
And I was like, "Oh,
That's
really?"
a good reframe.
He's
Yeah.
like, "Yeah, you're just exercising your heart muscle." He's like, Don't be afraid of it. Right? You're not doing any damage." And so I it was like hearing that even was like, again, this permission to be like, "Okay, it's going fast. Wow, this one's getting a good workout right now."
Yeah, it's a good
Right?
reframe.
So
I
he
think,
said
like
like, yeah.
I
Sorry,
think
go
for
on.
me too, like I used to get so frustrated, like, well, it shouldn't be though. I shouldn't be getting a good
Yeah.
workout when I'm up or I'm just barely doing anything. But you could also reframe that as like, ooh, awesome. I barely had to do anything to get a great workout.
That's
Great.
how what I
I'm
did.
having to go
Exactly.
like pump iron and do all this stuff now to get it to do that. So like good on you that you can just stand up and like there it is. Now
There
you
it
can
is.
allow it. You don't have
Yeah.
to go do all these things to get it up there to change your relationship with it, like, you know what I mean? Like, you just
Yeah.
all these reframes of, like, awesome,
Yeah.
get your workout in, just by walking to the bathroom, like, but try to, yeah, reframe it, in that way and soften to it and allow now I have
Yep.
a chance, I have an opportunity, and I didn't have to hardly do anything.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. So I think if you're I mean, you could talk for hours, I'm
Yeah.
sure, and we'll probably have you back on, but, I think your story just really is, a reflection of the evolution too of allowing, right? Kind of the evolution of
Yeah.
acceptance and resistance, and also just reflecting at, there comes a point where it really all clicks, and you see it clearer than ever, and you understand that what you've been that chronic resistance is at the core of a lot of the chronic symptoms or experiences that you're having.
Yeah, so it's like, don't focus
And
on the symptoms, focus on your resistance, like,
yes,
go there,
so go to it. It's
work through that.
exactly, yeah, that's the signpost,
Yeah.
that's the reassurance that you're on the right path, and it's a reflection of that potential, because there's
Oh,
potential for all of us here, right? And if someone wanted to reach out to you, I'm going to put the links below as well, because follow her YouTube channel. She's already got a couple episodes up there, and they're awesome. And she's just going to share so much from this place of experience, really. Anything else you wanted to share? Maybe even if you were to give a hope rope to someone who's listening right now, maybe someone who's where you were at, where I was at, and you could give them one piece of advice, a hope rope, what would it be?
yeah. Yeah, I think, like, to do that, I really wanna talk to somebody who's coming off medication and somebody who maybe is in going through withdrawal, whether you're tapering or you had to come off abruptly, and first, I just wanna say, like, what you're going through is very real, and it's valid, and it can feel like nobody can understand this, like any other symptom, but, like, I really wanna talk to somebody going through withdrawal and just let them know, like, it there's 2 things to take away from it that I took away from it, and the first one is that we are designed to heal. Your nervous system will like, even without when I was in the beginning of withdrawal, I couldn't it was so hard to even engage in any mind body work. Like, take that pressure off of yourself, and for a little while, just trust, like, that you are nature. Your body is designed to heal, your nervous system is designed to heal, and depending on how severe you are with withdrawal, like, the only thing really to just focus on is just surviving the day, and if you did that, then you won, and good job, and do it again tomorrow, and the next day, and the next day, and trust that, like, you will start to get better, even if it's really, really scary and wild, like, you will, and let me be that hope rope for you because I came off 2 things cold turkey was just, I was considered a very severe case of that. And I'm still here, and it's because I held on to this truth, which is we are designed to heal. Things will come back into balance, and I don't have to do everything right and perfectly for that to happen.
Mhm.
I can just let it happen. And it's really hard because you want the relief now, but just hang in there, like,
I love
truly.
that.
Yeah,
Yeah, you're designed to heal, and all you need to do is let it happen in a sense. I love that's beautiful.
yeah.
Thank you so much, Whitney, for coming
Thank
on
you.
today. I'm
Thanks for
sure you'll
having
be
me. Yes.
back again, and we'll kind of co-host or have some more conversations. But it was such a pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks. I love you.
Love you.
Bye.